cool.
Still nobody's French, unfortunately. I don't have any settings for that, so you have
Guys,
to
guys,
bear with me
please,
for that.
no. If anyone says baguette, you're gonna get banned. Okay, I'm telling you this now.
Okay, let me see.
Well, hi. You have
Great.
very good English.
Thank you.
Nice. And how's it going? What tell me how was your day?
Yeah, but basically I worked this morning at my shop because I own a shop now. But yeah, was really looking forward for this interview. Was
Yeah.
looking through your videos before
no.
the stream just to get back in context, get the mood of the place, you know. But yeah, I really digged your I think the two summaries you did for 2022 and 2023, like
Yeah,
a
that was
year
a
in
fun
game
one.
dev. Yeah, and the progression from last year and this year was really interesting because I saw some things and some patterns in growing as a game dev that happened to me, but like 2 or 3 years prior. So yeah, this was really interesting getting to know that you already did small games, completed them, tried your hands on different platforms, doing things on mobile, etc. And then progressively going to new project, bigger project, having a burnout, going back to another project. Yeah, that really spoke to me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's nice, like, you think you're going on such a personal journey, and it's really nice when people like can connect with that.
Yeah.
One last chat, should I increase his volume, because I can increase the volume more. Is it good, chat?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, they say
Great.
yeah, it sounds good. I'll lower mine just a bit. Okay, yeah, that's awesome. And so what type of shop do you have?
Basically, I live in a very small rural town in like the French Central Mountains. We're basically 300 in the summer, and right now it's in the winter, so a lot of residents go back to other homes they have in big cities, etc. So it's more like a lot of summer homes in the village. So in August, the previous owner of basically this is the only shop in the village. So you basically do everything from food, like gas for cooking, and appliances, socks, like
Wow.
the all round. It's a very small shop, like 80 square meters of floor space.
That's awesome.
And the previous owner had contracted cancer, and she was closing shop. So the village was about to lose its only shop. Nobody was really prepared to buy the entire shop or do this as a job, because you had to buy the entire stock and the appliances, the fridges, all this. But I had the money, I had the time, so I decided to buy the business, and it's been like 4 months since August, 3 or 4 months, and I'm running the shop as a side job with game development, which is pretty fitting because you have a lot of dead time when you are a cashier. Basically, I just need to be there because anyone can enter, but I don't have people coming through the door. Like
You have
any
your
minutes,
laptop.
it's more like basically I work on my cash register because it's
Nice.
not a proper cash register. It's a desktop PC with like a scales the beep beep thing. I don't know how you call it in English. In French, it's douchette, but
It
the
scans
scanner
it.
for
Yeah, the
scanning
scanner.
items. Yeah, it's just a USB port on the back of the desktop. So I have Unity installed uh, on my cache register, so I can still work on the game. I have a Git repository, so I can send work back and forth from my home and to the shop. And when I have a bit of time between clients, I do small UI things or pixel art. Or I can't really develop much because you need to be very focused, and I can always be interrupted by clients going through the door and
Of course, yeah.
wanting a baguette or a pain au chocolat au croissant.
Okay, I'll let you say baguette.
I'm allowed to say baguette.
Only
I sell
Pierre.
maybe 20 baguettes a day. So yeah, I'm very much allowed to say baguette.
No, that's awesome. And I think like living in a small town, for me, like I love that. I think it also allows, you know, to focus on game dev and stuff, because I used to live in Miami and now I live in like a smaller city in Poland, and that helps a lot, I think, like just slowing down life. It's slow paced.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Especially I think with creativity.
Boredom spreads creativity, and you get really bored. Like the time when you live in rural places is just different, and you get to enjoy the day and the differences in seasons, and the inherent calm of the place can really get you comfortable in your home because it's mostly silent. Like I believe noise is a bit was driving me crazy, at least.
Yeah.
So getting to a nice quiet place to work on your game next to the fire, it's really a good environment for making games or making any creative or self-centered work where you put all the work yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, I went also through like your YouTube channel and I saw another game you were working on where it was like underground. What's that game called? Yeah, but these games, like, they're so creative. Like you could see the creativity. They're really, I don't know, like, where do you think that creativity comes from, or how have you harnessed it and developed it?
I think the biggest thing is not it's not being creative. I think everyone can be creative. It's definitely a muscle that you have to strengthen over time and use regularly. Definitely, but everyone can be creative. I see it on my Twitch when I do game dev live streaming, etc. Especially when I design monsters or try and come up with mission ideas or just brainstorm in general. You really get really interesting or novel ideas from basically anyone. Like everyone can come up with a good idea. The main thing I think I got from my experience working as a game designer was getting to know what makes an idea good. Like maybe someone gives you a good idea, but you reflect on it for a bit and you get to the core of the idea, getting to know, okay, maybe like I like this idea, but not quite, it wouldn't work that great in the game. And I have, I think what you see, I'm going to talk a bit about my games as I see them. It's not something that I normally do, but it might sound a bit pompous, but it's the feedback I got over time. But when you see my games, it's often very coherent. So you see the root game, Root Town, which is based on an old Ludum Dare compo I did like 2 or 3 years ago. And the story is a bit interesting. Maybe I tell that later. But
I'm showing it on stream, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
The game is basically going underground. So you have this game mechanic, and then you say, okay, what goes underground in this kind of pattern is roots, or basically the two ideas come together at first, and then you try and find gameplay elements or story elements that complement this core idea. So you find your gem, and then you build upon it. So how do you die when you're rude? You get not enough water, so the plant dies and the root stops to grow. So okay, I have a failing condition now that is tied to the main core concept. And then okay, so I need water, so it's a collectible. So this gives me a path to go, and okay, I can build obstacles. What obstacle can I put on underground? So it can be rocks, it can be pipes, it can be trash, it can be fossils, it can be old pockets. So you get through, and you get all these ideas coming from trying to get as close as possible to your core concept. So everything, you're not throwing ideas randomly and seeing what sticks. You get at first a sense of, will it fit inside the experience I'm trying to create? So this can really help you sort out bad ideas from good ones. And it's basically the holistic approach. It's something I'm really like. For me, it's the secret to game design is the holistic approach. Everything, when you see a good game, most of the time everything fits together. The theme, the game mechanics, the audio, the graphic design, etc. It fits so well because they took time to make sure that every piece of the game fits with every other one. And the easiest way to do that is to have everything fits to a center pillar or a few center pillars. So for a simple game, it can be, okay, I have to go up. So you find all the things you can think about. So I want to go up and feel floaty. So you have a goal and an experience. That's your gem, that's your core component, and you say, okay, so my player avatar must feel light. You have to telegraph your concept or use metaphors and concepts that convey the ideas that reinforce your core pillar, and that's how you build an experience that feels coherent and nice to play and nice to immerse yourself into, because you don't deal with weird disturbances where you play a game and some piece of the UI doesn't fit or is weirdly textured, or it creates noise into
I feel like
your game.
not everybody is so sensitive to that distort. Like you say, like when something's out of place, like you can see that, but I feel like not everybody is sensitive to such things.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I wasn't when I started.
Yeah.
I think it's really something that you get used to when you know that this is the end goal. You try and make your games you try and make games that are as holistic and as possible, and the more you do that, the more your game gets holistic. Like, it's one thing to make a game, publish it, and getting feedback, because that's basically how we make games, how anyone will make games. You put a game out there, you get feedback as much as possible, and you learn from it. But you learn differently when you take into consideration, okay, it must run nicely, it must look pretty good, etc. But how does the experience, the feelings I want to infuse into my player, convey, how good are they translated to that player, and where are the noise? And often you see that it's really subtle, but when you spend enough time watching people play your games, and I really let me put an emphasis on that. You have to watch people play. You can't just read feedback lists or reviews, written reviews, etc., or just commentaries where someone basically played your game and does a 5-minute commentary. No, you have to live stream are perfect for that, or watching someone play over their shoulders when you're doing game jam or events or that kind of stuff. This is where you get the most information, because you notice every little seconds, things, how they react, how long they take to maybe they won't think about it, but they will spend like 3 or 4 seconds filling in the menu, not knowing where to click things. But for them,
I didn't know about the
maybe
artifacts.
it's normal. Yeah. But
Yeah,
you notice things at a much more, like, I remember when I was watching people play TinyFolks on live stream on Twitch, I always had like a blank sheet of paper, and at the end of the stream the piece of paper was black with everything I noticed, like, okay, bug there, this in me is it's too strong, I need to nerf this, etc., because people won't really comprehend this because they are playing a new thing, but you know what is the goal, what you want to make them feel. So if they feel frustrated at level 2, or it feels a bit difficult, you can say, okay, maybe it's a bit difficult, or you can say, I want this area to be difficult, maybe I need to change the challenge a bit, or make them better understand how to get better at the game, etc. Give them ways to explore your game as much as possible.
I could
but
see
yeah,
now.
it's really something you. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. No, I could see now how, like, from what you're saying, how you make games, how like TinyFolks has like started up from this conception of like your characters are small. You know, like when I first played it, I didn't really process all of that, but now it's like I can see how, you know, it started from that idea that you're feeling tiny in this big world, and you're fighting these big monsters and everything.
To be fair, I think TinyFolks, and this is one of my other big concern when doing any project, and it stems from my path as a game designer, is scope. I'm a big watcher of scope, and this is my main concern when I make games. And how do you reduce the amount of effort you have to put into, especially if you're a single dev, because you have to do all the graphics, all the code, all the music, all the sound effects, all the little cinematics, animation, text, etc. How can you minimize that as much as possible? And one of the ways you can do that is really, like, the smallest units of graphic you can have is like a bunch of white pixels that you animate on 4 frames, because that's basically all you need. Like we have a saying in French which goes back to an old like YouTuber video, which is good enough. Okay, it's good enough. And this is really my motto. So, okay, do I really need to do massive player sprites to convey the ideas? Because on the other hand, I know I want to have a lot of content to have a game that really shares a lot of the ideas I want to convey. But if I have to do for every monster I make for the game 5 animations, and it's in color, and it's even 32 by 32, if you have 6 animations in color, it's really a big amount of work. So getting minimal as possible, just enough to convey your ideas. And I really do believe that most of TinyFolks is designed on 16 by 16 1-bit pixel art sprites. And I have a few Sprite 5 which are really fast to load once the game is done. So it's really easy to work with. You don't have to deal with a bunch of layers, and you pretty much you sculpt more than you draw. Basically, you really think about contrast. Or more so, you don't have to think about contrast, because there's only 2 colors, like no color or color.
How many colors
so
were in
everything is
TinyFolks in total?
4 main colors that I worked with, and
Jesus.
then I maybe have 4 or 6 additional colors that are mainly used for the UI. Like I have a color specific for the burn, specific for
Okay.
healing, the
Oh,
red
yeah.
for the HP, etc., and bleeding. But yeah, you can really limit yourself, and I still think I
insane.
got a bit too far on TinyFolks, and I could have been even more minimalistic. On one point, it's mainly the resources. Like in TinyFolks, you have gold, but you also have wood, iron,
Yeah.
gems, alloy,
Yeah.
and basically, I found it a bit too big, like too many resources to
Yeah.
really make them impactful enough. So you never have to think about it, because I give you enough resources so that it's not a burden, but you don't have to think about it. So
Yeah.
I could even have reduced that even more, but the mistake I did regarding resources, it's okay, I need resources, I can think of credits, iron, wood, etc. It's just okay, I put them in the game at the start and see where it got from there, and I didn't think about okay, what can I do, or what can I say that is interesting with this resource system. And for example, right now I'm working on Space Folks, which is the next installment in the TinyFolk franchise. So it's sci-fi, but there I only have 3 resources. You have credits, so basically gold. You have meat, so organic matter, and iron, so metal. And this can say a lot more than wood, iron, etc.
Yeah.
Because when you kill a robot in a sci-fi setting, you'll get metal. But when you kill or defeat an organic alien or weird space tentacle stuff, you get more meat. And then if you kill a cyborg, you get a bit of both. So you can start and infuse lore using resources. If you have you can basically do this with every resource system. The loot that something drops tells you a bit about the things that you just killed. But if you're a solo dev and you're trying to make content, because you need to do a lot of content when making any game, if you want to go past the 2-hour limit on Steam, so people don't say, I paid X amount of money for just a 30-minute experience. What the fuck? So you have to, at least when you try and commercialize a game, have some campaign or some form of content so that your game lives enough in the Steam library of your players, so that they don't feel that they lost money. Even if I don't like this argument or this way of thinking, but it's just a way that a lot of people think.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially people who don't make games, who have a different point of view. Because we make games, we know how hard it is to even make a 5-minute game.
So
and you can have a lot of fun with 5-minute games also.
Yeah, so how long have you been doing pixel art, game dev, and how long did it take you to make TinyFolks?
I think, and let me touch all the areas. So I did in TinyFolks, I did the music, the arts, so pixel arts, game dev, and game design. And marketing also, etc. But I have basically no experience in that. But yeah, I think I started with music, like I did drums, etc. when I was a teenager, and I continued making electronic music using those on the computer, etc. So that really helped, because music is quite a hard skill to master, to make good enough soundtrack for a game and to make enough of it to fill an entire game OST. Like I believe all music, like the entire TinyFolks OST, is like 45 minutes, maybe even 1 hour now that I have new content, etc. So it's basically making an album. When you make a game, you also have to make an entire music
Yeah.
album. So
I mean, the
already
TinyFolks
having
music's really slaps. I just gotta
Thank
say
you.
that.
But but you can really feel the electro techno inspirations and habits I had.
I was
It's really
dancing like
boom boom
literally the whole
boom.
time I play. I'm
Yeah,
just. I think it's a common
and that's right.
experience.
But I basically started like I did electronic music, but I started doing chiptunes when I have never made chiptune before making TinyFolks, so that was fun. This was a new music area to explore. But there, so I did music for a lot of time, and then I started game design as my main like college studies. I basically studied game design for 3 years in Paris.
Okay.
Where I worked in different studios. Like I worked on the Tour de France cycling game, like just placing trees and farms, etc. in the background, doing some level building, basically level design, but you don't have any design intent, you're just building the levels. And then I left, so I got my diploma, and then I found a job in a VR company that was developing VR simulations for big companies. So, for example, you want to teach people how to drive a forklift, but you want to try them to train them virtually before. So I was making those kinds of simulations. At first, I was a developer there. That's where I mainly started doing Unity development. So that was maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
So I have 5 years experience in Unity, like doing gameplay UI, Unity editor stuff, like a lot of things in Unity. But then I continued, as the company grew. I began to go back to my game design roots and mainly working on game design with the clients and the production team, and making sure that the scope of the project, and maybe it's where I got my scope sensors really tightened, because when you have a client and you have to deliver something in 6 months with your team, and the client doesn't know what goes into making games, and it's recreating things that exist in the real world that they know pretty well. So, forklifts, this kind of feature here, and if you do a double turn on the driving wheel, you can do 360 backflips, etc. You say no. We will just make the simplest thing that goes like that, get the point across. So you really have to narrow down, get minimalistic, basically.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
that really trained me in this way. And when, like, basically 1 year after the start of the pandemic, since we were doing VR, like the VR business for companies was struggling at the time, because all major work safety events that company were doing were cancelled. So I didn't have a lot of work, especially as a game designer, because I was in charge of new projects, mainly when projects go through the door, and you have to get the first contact, brainstorm ideas with the clients, etc. But we weren't having that much new projects entering, so I was basically working 1 or 2 days a week, and I started doing game jams on the side, because I just like making games. So I had free time. I decided
that was the first time you started doing it, like your own games?
Regularly. Yeah, I think I did one game jam like really early in my career. I did game jam with friends during my college years and after, but I made one, like it was an in-person game jam at the university in the town I lived in. And I said, okay, challenge, I can do a game jam on my own. And this was the very first project I did on my own. It was like maybe 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
Okay.
And it was a really simple clicking gesture, management game where you are a homeless person, and you just need to get $70 to take a ferry and go back to your place, because you basically, the start of the game, your bag gets stolen, so you lose everything, and so you just need to get the $70 to.
And it was in
go back to
pixel
the
art?
main. No, it was like it's a really cheap trick I used before, where you rip images from the internet and then you put them in like Inkscape or Adobe Illustrator, and you vectorize them. And then you just change up the color palette so it matches the entire game. But it's just, ripped off pictures from the internet that I then vectorize, so it's stylized. And it was basically an entire game that run only on UI. So it's just clicking on stuff, reading texts, going to places on the map, etc. It's on my Chio, it's called Homes. Maybe I can send you... It's all in French. Unfortunately, it was like my first. Like, it was an in-person game jam in a French university, so it's in French. But then when I started doing game jams, I got really interested. But basically, what was, I think, the big aha moment was when Mrs. Izzy's, I don't know if you know him.
I know him, yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, he's an American Godot game dev, I think, something like that.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
and he hosted like challenges, like four game dev use the same art pack and make a game.
Yeah,
and then he did a game jam using Kenny's 1-bit asset pack. Where I made TinyFolks, so it was a 1-week game jam. I never did participate in a 1-week long game jam before, so this was kind of a step up. I was used to 6-month long project as a team. I was used to 48-hour project solo. I knew it could be done. So the 1-week step up was really interesting, because I need to think a bit bigger, but not too big, because I know I was already attuned with scope, etc. So I knew you just have to do a little bit more content and a lot more polish that you have time to do in game jams. So I spent a week working on TinyFolks, which basically is the prototype of TinyFolks that I would later create. And the game got really good ratings in the game jam. So Mrs. Izzy's ended up playing it on its live stream. And this was the first time that I was watching a complete stranger play my game on the internet for like an hour and a half. It was like magical. It really, like, the best experience ever. It's such a fun and enjoying experience. I was grinning all the time. When the live stream ended, I was like, my cheekbones. It was an amazing experience. So I decided to really focus on that. And I knew I believed in myself, because I knew I had just made an hour-long game in a week, using an art pack that was basically the same kind of resolution than TinyFolks. Was just one bit pixel art. So then I got into communities where we would do like 3-hour-long game jams. So you can prepare all the assets
Had you used
beforehand,
pixel
but
art
then
before that?
No, I basically learned pixel art when I started TinyFolks. Like my very first pixel art. Basically, I didn't started thinking about, I'm going to start on TinyFolks now. It was an idea that I had in my brain. I was, if I end up starting and making a full-fledged game, I think the best game I made in jams that could spread into a bigger game would be TinyFolks. So the game I had made during the jam. So if I had to make a game, it was like the sequel to TinyFolks, a bigger version of it. But then I got bored one day and I just bought a sprite, and to practice I started making little icons. So maybe like the sword icon or dagger icon you see in TinyFolks. They haven't changed from since then. I like the knight and the magician, maybe the priest also were like the first pixel art people I did, and they just stayed this way for like the entirety of the game. I just animated them afterward. And I just kept going. Like day after day, I was doing pixel art, and then I was starting to think about putting them in a Unity project, starting to work on the combat system, etc. And then I never stopped until the game got finished. I'm even still working on it now. A game is never finished once you published it, but yeah.
Wow, I thought you had way more experience in pixel art. So what, like 4 years of experience?
No, 2 years.
2?
Started August 2021. Yeah.
That's when you started TinyFolks?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's when I did my very first pixel art sprites, which would end up being the Night in TinyFolks. But
okay, we can do it, guys.
I spent, yeah, you can absolutely do it. If you like, I think I really like starting with very, very small canvas size. Like I was only doing 16 by 16 sprites and only in 2 colors. And I think it's the best way to start learning pixel art, because you really have to think about every pixel you place, and you don't have to place a lot of them for completely changing the feel of your. And it's really easy to start over. Okay, this sprite doesn't work. Let me scrap it. Try another idea. You can iterate really, really fast, and it's really easy to animate. Also, you can learn animation. Really
but having
fast
such a restriction. But to have such a restriction in size and color, does that increase the scope at all? Or not really?
Yeah, because, like, for example, a good example now is, like, we've spoke about Rootown before. To make a single tree in Rootown maybe takes me, like, a good part of an afternoon to do all the animations, like the first concept, the lighting, the shadows, etc., outlines. It really takes an afternoon. In an afternoon in TinyFolks, I could do maybe 10 or 15 monsters animated, ready to go in the game. So having these kind of really big restrictions can completely explode the amount of content you can put in the game. Like, for example, you look at Cookie Clicker, which has amazing content, but it's mainly static images and really low resolution and text, which are like really fast thing to create, basically. So you don't have to spend a lot of time doing animations, because everything is static or it's just moving using simple movement animation or scaling animations. So thinking about that when you decide what type of artistic direction you want to go into. If you're trying to do an entire game all by yourself, and you know that this kind of game will require a lot of content, and since I knew that TinyFolks would be an RPG, it's like one of the type of game where you'll have a lot of content. Just try and make the content as quick to produce as possible, and still being a thing that looks good and is personal. And low resolution 1-bit pixel art was the way to go for me. But now I'm moving past that. I'm more using like 4 colors for the entire sprites. But it also allows you to, like I said about contrast earlier, when you start making games and you have right now we have access to millions of colors when we're making games, but that can really drive you crazy, because you always have to have context for the objects you create when you're using a lot of colors, because maybe the green of that plant will clash or look out of place or make noise, as I was working before. Like things sort of stand out or don't fit inside everything else, so maybe the background is a bit too saturated, so the player doesn't read as well, or you have weird junctions, or this section has too much detail in it and this is too plain. And when you're making a game, I think legibility of your game screen is really important, because most of the actual game is inside the player's head, not in the screen. When you get into a game long enough, you don't see the screen the same way. You will, like, it's like when you're driving. At first you are careful about everything, but then you instantly recognize signs next to the road, etc., because you know the shape. They read well over the background. And doing things in 4 colors, or maybe a little bit more, like 8 or 16 colors, you get to pick colors that will stand out because you don't have very much of them. You can't add a lot of details because you don't have a lot of tools to work and create details. So you really have to think about shapes, silhouettes, how where you can put spaces in the game where you don't have any details, because that's where you will put your players or your UI or things that needs to stand out. It really gets you into, it's a bit of a hack, like you create your game dev environment to simplify all the other decisions as much as possible. And when you start minimalistic and you think about really doing more with less, it really eases up the process afterward, because all the decisions are made by the decisions you've made before.
Yeah. Do you do a game design document when you're making a game?
No.
No? Okay, yeah.
No, I don't have any documents. I don't even have a to-do list. I don't have any documentations for my game. And that's maybe not good for everybody, but it works well for me, because I like to be very fluid. Like I basically know what I want to do, and I have a few to-do lists. Like, for example, when I was doing TinyFolks, I had my entire list of enemies, ideas, or biomes, and I have a very day by day approach when I make a game. So, okay, I know that this week I want to make monsters, so I spent a morning with my viewers brainstorming about different biomes we can do. So, okay, to get the example of TinyFolks, we were thinking about, okay, maybe a port, maybe a mine, maybe forest, etc. And then start, okay, forest, what could be great enemies for forest? Blah, 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 blah. A pig, a boar, wasps, giant mushrooms. And then, okay, I have my small list of monsters for today. Let me just make them all. Think about abilities in the meantime, etc. Brainstorm with the community.
My favorite was the goblin one.
Yeah.
I love the music when you come in. And the goblins.
The goblin music might be my favorite as well.
Yeah,
but my favorite enemy might be the rat, because at one point someone said, no, it's the boar, because a lot of people were very confused. Like, it's one drawback of 1-bit pixel art. It's sometimes you're like, does it really look like the ears have the same shape as the tail? So some viewers, and it happened more than once, viewers were mistaking the boar for like
a dog.
2 dogs. 2 dogs that were doing the dirty. And once I saw that, I was, oh crap, he's right. It totally looks like that, but it never occurred to me before. That's one drawback.
But it's still like it's fun.
But it's fun.
It goes with it. Yeah, it's fun, and it's like you can laugh about it. Yeah. I don't
it's not that. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a question. I forgot. Yeah, I need to write it down. Wait, let me see. Oh yeah. So any video games influence TinyFolks, or just your
Darkest
game
Dungeon,
influences? Yeah, Darkest Dungeon.
Darkest Dungeon, definitely.
Yes.
Say it's the biggest influence, but
Hmm.
I think that's the most obvious reference, mainly because it was like, it's not. I really liked Darkest Dungeon, but I'm not like a big player. I don't think I've ever finished it actually.
It's hard to
I'm
finish.
not that good, and it's hard. And I wanted to make like the same kind of stuff as Darkest Dungeon, but one of the main criticism of Darkest Dungeon is, oh, it's too hard. So I say, okay, I can do Darkest Dungeon. I don't see a lot of games that have recreated this style of combat system, and this type of party building and combat system and exploration. It's basically the same game loop. So go and fight monsters, upgrade your town,
Yeah.
choose your party of adventurers, go to fight monsters. It's exactly the same main loop, but just throw little spices here and there, like the class combination system, the different biomes, the aesthetic, the fact that it's a bit more bit easier, the time limit.
Yeah, the
It's
timeline
enough
was a good
to,
one. I honestly.
yeah, but it's basically like I wanted the game to have some sense of. It's basically a way so that you don't rest, because one way to cheat the game is just
Yeah.
to rest,
Yes.
rest,
Yes.
rest, rest. So if you don't have that pressure of time, it really um, removes something from the game. And at first, I didn't have the option to play without the timer when I first released the game, but I was like, I had so many feedback from players that I can't play the game. The time just stresses me out.
Oh,
That
okay.
I like 2 or 3 days later, I added the option to toggle that off and
Yeah.
just made it so that you don't get achievements
Mm-hmm.
if you decide to remove. So you have still that bit of a challenge to overcome if you
Yeah.
really want to get the goods. But yeah, that's just a good design trick. If you find people, if you have a turn-based system where people can cheese by always doing a pattern, you always must find a way to at least put a limiter on that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and then the difficulty makes it more interesting, of course.
Yeah, it's more tense, and you have to think more about the actions you wanted to do. And this is like, it stems from another big inspiration that might be really less obvious because it's like a really obscure game. And this was like years before I even started doing game jams, etc. So it's on itch.io. It's called Royals
Mm-hmm.
by Asher Volmer. Let me put it in chat real quick. And it's basically also a very, very minimalistic game, but amazing game. Like top-notch game design.
Okay.
So fun to play. Really minimalistic, and basically it's a lot like TinyFolks, because you start off as a nobody, and your goal is to become royal, so to become a king or a queen. And you recruit people in the tavern. So you have, I have a new party member, so I can send him work to the farm to earn me money, or I can train him to battle guards, etc. And you have a fixed time limit because your main character dies at a certain point, and you can make some decisions that extend your like, if you build a house and live in it, you can live a little longer. You lose health slower, but it has this time limit built in, so that was already an influence in me. Okay, I want to use a lot of concept that I really liked about Royals, the 1-bit pixel art. Like, I really dig the aesthetic. I find it so clear and so minimalistic. It's a good example of, you find this game and you say, I could do that by myself, because no music, really minimalistic artwork, good game design, a few lines of text, a few lines of codes, and voila.
Yeah, I definitely think like, especially nowadays, I feel like people in general just are gravitating more towards minimalism. So I think having games, be more minimalistic, I think it's just
Mm.
it just lets you clear your mind. It's like living in a small village, It's just you have a
Yeah.
clearer mind and people are so stressed from all the chaos day to days. So I think that's a really good, it's good to do such limited constrained pixel art and yeah, the colors and everything. I think
Mm.
it's important.
It leaves room for the player's imagination also.
Definitely.
Uh, can I ask for a quick break, real quick?
No problem. Yeah,
Yeah, no problem.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, just go. I'll talk to
See ya.
chat. Yeah, guys. Yeah. So, wait, who is that? What's that? Is Lawcraft done? Yeah, this is the creator of TinyFolks. You could see I have footage of me playing the game down there. Well, I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. Yeah, this is very interesting. I'm kind of amazed that he's only been doing this for like what 3 years. Like what the heck? And guys, next game jam, I think it's gonna be a one big game jam. I'm inspired, honestly. That's really cool. Like I always thought that when you limited the scope of the pixel art and I thought it made it harder and it extended the development time, but apparently it doesn't. So yeah, next game jam we're gonna go one bit. Yeah, it's okay, guys. I'm gonna be editing this video, so of course you could see it in the VOD, but you could also wait. I'll edit it with the audio and everything. And yeah. I'm glad you're enjoying it, guys. Creative TinyFolks interviewed by feature creator of Logcraft. Constraints for the win. No need to always decide on colors. Yeah. And the TinyFolk color is just so satisfying. Hey.
I'm back.
Nice. Yeah, we're all just talking about like the 1-bit pixel art.
But I really do recommend if you're wanting to get started doing pixel art. Basically, I started with 1-bit pixel art, just making sure that I get to know the software as well.
Mm-hmm.
But really getting used to making shapes out of a very few amounts of tools and detail. And this way you can build it up, because like I spend a lot of time with the French pixel art community. I'm a really active member of this community. I know a lot of other French pixel artists, and every pixel artist will say don't start with a lot of color and a big canvas. Like it's the worst thing to do when you start pixel art. Start small, really tiny. Like tiny in pixel art sense is 16 by 16, 32 by 32 max.
Yeah, I mean, when I was making my Greek game Hypatia, I had 32 by 32. And I thought it was like, oh, it's easier because you have more space. But when I changed to 16 by 16, it drastically made it way more efficient, way easier. And I guess it's a misconception.
Yeah. 32 by 32 is quite big for characters in pixel art.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I did that really helped me is when I wanted to learn new technique and start to work with color as well. I took images or a specific artist. Mostly French pixel artists, and trying to do 1 or 2 live stream where I would try and make an artwork in their style.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So you really have to look at details and how they deal with color, how they deal with shape and shading, and trying to find artists that have really different art style, but that you really like. So and a good thing because since I was doing that on Twitch most of the time, I had the artist in the chat that was giving me tips and tricks to help me improve or get their technique down, understand how they do things, like the behind the scene of how they create their artwork. This really helped me, like doing, maybe I did 6 of those, I think, like six different artists, but it really improved my pixel art super quickly. And making pixel art every day for like a year really does improve your skill, like any skill. The longer you do it and the more assets you put down, the better you feel about your abilities as a pixel artist.
Do you meet up with these people in person or online?
Online, yeah.
Okay.
Mainly online.
So like you communicate on Discord or something, and you guys give each other feedback. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, we have a few pixel artist voice chats where we share our artworks, but we also spend time on each other's streams as well, because a few of them do live stream. But we share artworks. We're a community basically, so try and communicate along the interwebs to share artworks, etc.
And so what was one of the biggest issues while you were developing TinyFolks?
I don't think I came across that many issues. Like I had technical difficulties, as in any game. I think the hardest part actually is not ending the game or making the game, is keeping interest long enough in the game to not let it die too quickly. So making sure to go back to the game here once in a while to fix bugs, and the more time passes after your release day, the harder it becomes to go back to the game.
Yeah.
Especially if you've started other projects, like go back into your old system to tweak things, and the more you tweak things after release, the more it becomes kind of a chimera of itself. You've added so many systems that are just like Band-Aid or weird sketchy stuff to add content without breaking the old saves, etc. That it really becomes quite a hard ship to steer afterwards. But once you've done that once, you really became prepared to anticipate it on other projects. So that's mainly because TinyFolks was my first like big released game that I updated afterwards. Those are the problem I came across. Like the biggest problem I came across, like adding content without having the files of everyone that bought the game completely break when I launched the update, was a pretty stressful moment, definitely, because it's not like, okay, I'm in alpha, I can just push a broken version. I'm like gonna annoy 3 of my friends. No problem. But then you say, okay, I have this brand new update with a bunch of new content, but I had to tweak the save system, so a bunch of the new variables I need to store in this save file are stored in the player's name string that I then split and parse to get the data I need, because I didn't want it to add variables, so the save file class wouldn't get read if it was from previous version. That was a nightmare.
Oh my god, yeah, that sounds stressful.
Yeah, this is pretty hectic, yeah. So maybe think about that before releasing your game on Steam for people to play with.
Is it mostly the save files that are like the most stressful part about updating? Okay.
Yeah. Making sure so that people with old save files, your system can still read the old save file fine without freaking out because he's missing a few variables here and there.
Yeah.
Making sure that you can still read the old save files, backward compatibility basically. Mm. Yeah, that's like you have so many blind spots when you're making games. Like at first, most blind spots you might have are music or main menu. Like when you first do your game jam, like you're like 2 hours from the finish line. You go, oh shit, we don't have a main menu, or we don't have sound effects, or those are the first few things. Like you rarely forget codes and art when you're making a game, because that's pretty obvious. But yeah, there are things like achievement, localization, how to deal with special characters, how to deal with translating your game when people are reading in Korean, so you need to update your font. How to make sure that your translation file can accommodate for all length of object names. For example, if you have a really tiny space in the UI and the German translator just sends you like this beefy of a name that is the only proper translation, and you're like, this will never fit in the UI. Can you abbreviate it? It's just say no. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you have to think about that, and it's by dealing with those problems in previous project that you only you have to come across them at least once, and then get prepared. And that just goes with making a lot of different games, not especially making long games or big games. I think you can learn if you're starting out, you can learn a lot just from making a lot of different games and publishing to a lot of different platforms, on a lot of different devices, so that you explore the possible space, so that when you want to make your big game, you're at least a bit prepared. And in a way, that was what TinyFolks was supposed to be, because in my head, like when I quit my job as a lead game designer, I had like in France we have a pretty good unemployment system. Like it's a joke between the indie French game dev that like the unemployment benefits are like the first investor in a video game in France, because it's basically financing the entirety of solo game dev out there. But yeah, I had like 2 years of unemployment benefits. And since I live in a rural town with my girlfriend, etc., so I have very few expenses, so I could live off. And the plan was to make 4 projects during these 2 years, so 6 months for each project. And TinyFolks was supposed to be the first crash test project to just figure out how Steam works. So I didn't have really, like, for me, the success game, the one that will go off and sell well, was maybe going to be the 3rd or 4th. It happened to be the first one, so that really took me by surprise. So it wasn't really prepared to be that kind of game, but it worked good enough. I tweaked things on the go as people kept playing it and kept getting feedback. But when I was developing TinyFolks, I never thought it would get to the numbers we have now. So yeah, that was a surprise. I didn't prepare for it, and in my head it was, okay, let's figure out how the Steam works. Let's make my first game where I can deal with the achievement system and maybe try some cloud saving. But then it became like the game that a bunch of people play, so it has to be maintained in another way. You have to make sure that you don't break the game for hundreds, thousands of people that are playing your game regularly or just buying the game.
And how was the experience going mobile? Because it's available for Android and OS. Is it for iPhone too?
No, not for iPhone.
Just Android.
Just Android, yeah. It was really something I thought about from the beginning. Like I knew I wanted this game to be both on PC and on mobile. So this really helps to think this at the start of the project, because you're not going to make design decisions that clash with the mobile type of controls, where you can only touch, you can't use your keyboard or gamepad, etc. You only have to do point and click stuff. So it's really minimalistic. So that helps me, because I love thinking minimalistically. Like I can make a game, but I only have one input. It's the mouse and the click button. No other button is needed in TinyFolks, except if you want to rename your character. But then everything is just mouse and click, which gives it a really laid back kind of feel. And also I wanted to have no timed event, so no rush, no timer, because when you're playing something on mobile, especially a strategy game, you might be interrupted, or you might be on the bus, you need to get down or change seats, etc. So having things not timed is really good for mobile play. It's a bit less important for desktop and console, but for mobile, it's a really good quality of life. If the game doesn't need it, you don't have to put it in there. But then, yeah, I can't remember why I took so long to publish it on. Oh yeah, I remember. I released TinyFolks on Steam, on Mac and Linux as well, so all the 3 desktop platforms. And then I'm like, okay, I just made a bunch of money. Let's party. So I just enjoyed my. It was the end of the summer. I just had my house. I had some renovations to do, etc. So I just got busy with other stuff, and then I got back to working on the Android version, and then I published the game on Google Play, and maybe 2 or 3 days after launch, like my Google payment account gets nuked, and it wasn't because I did anything wrong, but I needed to create a business and have a separate bank account and banking information, etc. So Google would make my first payment. And if Google can't make you your first payment and you go past your payment threshold, with I think is like $3,500, Google just stops selling your game. So you can't sell your game anymore. So you have to make sure, if you have plans on making a game for Android, maybe publish some crappy game before, just to make sure that you have everything set up correctly, because this basically sent me back. Like, it took, I think, 6 or 7 months to get all the paperwork done.
Oh my
and
God.
The Google, it had like 6 or 7 back and forth with the automatic Google system to get my financial profile up and running. So basically the game was done, but I couldn't sell it. So then it was just paperwork and boring administrative stuff just to get it in the hand of people. Because the game also exists on my phone, but only on my phone. You can get it. I swear. I can give you the APK if you want, but I can't sell it. So that was just a dumb problem.
Are you interested in other
happens,
consoles though, like Nintendo Switch or Xbox?
I was offered to put the game on other consoles as well, but I don't I don't think TinyFolks is in good enough shape to ship in other consoles, mainly because I need to give my project to other companies that because I don't have dev kits for the different consoles I want to publish to, and also I don't I think and I don't have very much technical knowledge outside of Unity C#. Like I'm not a developer per se. I only do a very specific kind of thing, and it's developing games in Unity. Like, don't ask me to do a website or any kind of other development. I barely know another programming language. So yeah, going to other console, I think I'll need the help of other companies to do that, and I'm a bit. Like, I don't want to get scammed, because a lot of companies or publishing companies can really take advantages of misinformed solo game devs which just released their. Like, I was kind of a good prey. Oh, look, a new developer with a really successful game. Let's just give him a shitty contract and get it while it's hot. And yeah, I think I just took time. I'm thinking about it, but I'm in absolutely no rush. And I think it can serve you better if you release your game afterward on a console, because it can always reignite interest into your game. Like, hey, this game is coming out on Twitch. It was really successful on such and such platform.
I could really see it on Switch, honestly.
Yeah, on Switch it would be an amazing game. But it runs on the Steam Deck, which is basically a Linux platform. Apparently, it's really fun to play on Steam Deck as well. Yeah. So on Twitch it would be. But for example, I need to do all the new key binding stuff, and I basically have 0 key binding on Switch or on the game, because the game doesn't use a keyboard. I tried making some key binding, but it was just the game isn't built for that. Yeah. So technical issue and a bit of skepticism regarding the people that offer me to publish my game on consoles. So I don't know for now. Maybe someday if I get recommended a good company.
Yeah. So you're considering using a publisher in the future, if there's if you trust them and.
Yeah, if I trust them. And I think it gets really hard to trust publishers, or at least you need to have. And I think I'm better suited now, because I have an accountant which is specialized in video games.
Well, that's great.
So and it's insane, because she's like my neighbor in my small rural town in France.
What?
She lives like 500. It was. I need an accountant, and I basically told my girlfriend, which is an independent photographer. So she was using this accountant, which is like the closest accountant. And when I saw her to arrange a meeting, saying I was doing video games, but I like, this is like my countryside home, but I work in this big accounting that is like specialized in this kind of stuff, and we have, and it was at the time where a lot of people were offering me publishing deals for Roottown. So I was talking to her about that, and she told me, be careful with producers. If you really want to go forward with one, hand me the deal over so we can send it to a lawyer, send it to people that are used to dealing with those contracts. So just don't get scammed, because it can really happen when you're a solo game dev and you get noticed by a big publisher. There has been many horror stories. I mean,
it sounds like you have a really good security blanket, having lawyers and having a good accountant.
Yeah.
Because, normally, many indie devs don't have that, and they can easily take advantage of it.
I didn't need to. Basically, I can have the luxury of having that infrastructure now that I have a successful game, because it basically made a bunch of money, so I can use this money to secure my position and also buy me time to work on other projects. But these were not consideration I had, and I don't think you need them before you make your first successful game, because you can be successful without having all these kind of deals if you make a good enough game, now it's really feasible and it has been feasible for quite some time. Solo game devs running like making bangers of projects, and you don't have to be like world famous and have millions of downloads to be successful. Like you really can live just in a niche of players with like a pretty loyal fan base. You curate year after year, but once you have some good projects, and to make sure once you get a lot of attention, that should be the calling cry to start looking for some sort of protection, and having people around you that know more about the legal side of stuff, so you don't get scammed. That maybe when you start getting a few publisher emails regularly, that's when I think you should start to worry. But before, you don't really have to worry about all that. You just have to worry about making good games, finishing them, getting people to play your games, improving your skills. Yeah, that should be the main focus when you're starting out.
Mm-hmm. And what is the current game you're working on now? What is it called again?
It's TinyFolks.
TinyFolks, okay.
TinyFolks. Yeah, it isn't on Steam, or like it's really not showable at this point. I have a few monsters or graphics, but I'm mainly working, like, for now it's UI that don't look like anything, a skeleton of a combat system, etc. Just trying to do the main loop, which involves a lot of different systems that need to be done before you get a main loop going. So the battle system, like everything that goes into TinyFolks, I'm basically doing everything again, but with the insight of TinyFolks. Like, I'm not reusing the same core codes, but I'm using a lot of the design patterns and concept I was using. But since I'm doing a bunch of different stuff, like, for example, you can have enemies that take up 2 or 3 slots or 4 slots, like in Darkest Dungeon, something that I wanted to do in TinyFolks, but I didn't manage to do. Things like weapons that change the sort of abilities you have for your character. So it's not just an attack buff or a spell buff or a heal buff. It's really different abilities that really can change, etc. Having different ships, because the village gets replaced by your spaceship, so you can have different spaceship that completely changes the kind of activities and crafting and training you can have in your ship, etc. So basically doing TinyFolks but better.
No, that sounds really interesting.
That's the goal. Yeah.
I'll get to this question, and then I'll ask the chat if they have any questions for you. But so what video games have inspired you, like, throughout? I know Darkest Dungeon inspired TinyFolks, but what games really struck a chord in you?
I think, and that really shows what type of a gamer I am, because I rarely play games. Like, my Steam recap was like, I only played TinyFolks in 2023. It's the only, and I maybe played like 10 or 15 hours just to look for bugs before releasing, basically. I never play games. I have my Nintendo Switch where I played like the last Zelda for like 10 hours maybe, but I know I will pick it up later, just to when I will be on vacation or something like that. But I rarely play games. I'm not a big gamer, but I'm really interested in games, so I watch a lot of content or analysis and critics etc. of game, which allows me to see a lot of games without having to sunk the time to actually play them. But growing up, there's a thread between all the games that really stuck with me, and it's that there are games that allows you to make games. Like, for example, I really loved Spore when I was a kid. Like Spore the Maxis, like from the creators of Sims, etc. The game where you make penis monsters. Like everyone does that in the game. But like you could create your own creatures and create your own buildings. So it was like playing creation inside of a game. And then they released a DLC called, like an expansion CD called Spore Galactic Adventures, which allowed you to make small stories and levels using all the tools that Spores had already, all the editors. So you could make objects using the building menu. You could make creatures and NPC using the creature menu, and you had then a small level design tool where you could design your planet using the terraform tools, etc. And you could do small scenarios. And I spent so many time working on this, like just making garbage level, but I loved the fact that you could create everything by yourself. And then another game just like that I sunk a lot of time as a child into was, I don't know if you know the WarioWare series. If they,
While
like
you
they
were?
did, no, Wario, like in
Oh,
Mario,
Wario. Okay, yeah.
WarioWare. So it's
Okay.
a collection of micro games, like the really dumb games where you have to pluck nose hair out of someone, and then 5 seconds later you're flipping burgers, and 5 seconds later you're like doing really small tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it's like a flagship series for Nintendo to showcase all the different new stuff you can do with their console. So it was really popular at the launch of the DS because it showcases all the things you could do. Like, a touchscreen, you can draw, you can stretch, you can spin, you can tap, you can... and it's just a collection. I think the way the games are made is Nintendo ask a bunch of their developers to make 2 or 3 games, and then they just put it in. So it's like completely different art style. It's so random, but I love it. So I had the first one on DS when I got my first Nintendo DS, and then they released WarioWare Do It Yourself, where you had a small pixel art editor in the DS, and you had the Mario Paint music creation app, and you had small block logic. We could, if this lever is on the show sprite, very basic coding capabilities, and you had to make, like, you could make your different all the different mini games you'd want. So you had basically a really small but really tiny but complete game engine inside of your DS, and I just spent all my time working on small, crappy 3-second games that I would share with my cousins, with my
There
my
you go.
brother, that
Early
would start
signs.
and make games, etc. But yeah, I think I've always loved making games more than playing them. And even when I was like a kid, I wasn't really interested in. I didn't have. My father is like a computer scientist, so he was very protective about like screen time and technology as I was growing up. So I didn't grew up playing a lot of games. I had, like, my first console maybe was the Wii and the Nintendo DS, so pretty late, like I was already a teenager. So I didn't grow up playing games, but I grew up, like, I remember basically doing the exact same thing I did when I started TinyFolks, which was having a sheet of paper, making small squares, and I would write fictive combat abilities for, like, no game, but just to create them. Okay, slash, and then big slash, and then mega slash, which does like 300 health points damage, and then a magician which has this kind of ability, poison, etc. Just drawing all kinds of different monsters, abilities, etc. So yeah, and that's why I got into video game, because I'm not making video games because I love video games, because I don't play them. But it's mainly because it's the most complete medium out there. If you want to do music and art and writing and game design and development and cinematography, animation, you can do all of that in video games, and you have these special, unique things that games have, which is interaction, ludology, like the ludic aspect to games, which is pure, like only found in games. So you have all the different art mediums plus one. So it's like the ultimate
creative outlet.
Creative output. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I got into games, because this was the only path that would let me do everything all at once.
Yeah, I agree. It's just for creative people, it's the ultimate source of that outlet, and you can get everything. Yeah, it's very understandable. Is there anything else you want to talk about or add?
I think we've talked for a long bit. I think,
Yeah, I think it's, and I think also
maybe,
Chad has a little bit of questions if you have time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
But if I wanted to add something, it's thank you, Jackie, for the opportunity.
Yeah, no problem.
Really nice talking with you.
Yeah. I mean, you deserve all the attention you can get. Obviously,
thank you.
You're a very interesting person. Your games, like it, the creativity, it speaks through the games. And yeah, I think the world needs to know, and also for game developers, hearing about your experience, I think will help a lot of people. And
keep in mind for all the new developers or game dev out there that might be in chat, etc. Like I have now about 9 years experience working in game. Like when I very first started doing QA for a small like quality assurance for a small mobile game company, all the way to now full time in the game dev, or not full time because I'm a shop owner now, but mainly full time game dev. Like it takes time. Don't think that I just started making games like 2 years ago, because I did lots of games before developing TinyFolks. So don't feel discouraged. You won't have your overnight success with the first game you make. Make small games like pixel art. Start with the smallest thing you can manage, finish it, move to something else, do a bunch of them, and then goes one step higher. So you go to a 48-hour game jam, to 1 week game jam, to a 1 month game jam, then go back to 48 hours game jams to see how you progressed, how much you developed in abilities in art, music, code, scope, game design over the time you've spent, and then go back to bigger and bigger projects and do that incrementally. And that's how you get there. Like, don't start with like it's a meme, but don't start with a full MMO that will take you 10 years to produce. Like it's some people just manage to do that. Like for example, the Stardew Valley developer, basically did that. He spent all his time working on the game, but it's easy to forget that we have a big survivorship bias in the video game industry. We only see games that are successful, and stories of solo game dev that made it through. But it's quite rare. Basically, we have like 30,000 games on Steam. I believe I had the stats last year when I did a course at university, but it was like half of all the games that are on Steam did less than $1,000 total, like the entire lifespan of the game. So don't put all your eggs in your very first basket before you've learned to hold the basket. Try small games, free games, and have people play them, because that's important. The biggest way to learn is watching people play your games.
And especially finishing the whole game loop, start to finish.
Start to finish,
Yeah, that's That's very important. Invisible Matter asks, how do you maintain focus? Is routine important? Work-life balance? What inspires you to keep going?
At first, like when I first started working on TinyFolks, having Twitch as a live stream audience, like doing live streams was really helpful because I did all my live streams in the morning because in the French dev scene, I wasn't seeing other game devs doing live stream in the morning. So I said, oh, free real estate, let me slide in there. So that helped me like get up in the morning because I knew that at 9:30 p.m. I had to 9:30 a.m. I had to start my live stream. So this really helped get my day going and at least do something every day or most of the days. This really helped having to get accountable for like post your things on social media if you don't want to live stream or if you can't, but having systems or social accounts, social media accounts where you post regularly, and once you get a bit of traction, you have people interacting with it, so you're more engaged to post things about your game because you know people are listening, people
and
are
asking about
what you're doing, asking about it.
Yeah.
That really helps. Now that the game is done and I'm working, and I'm pretty set for like a year or two without having to think about making a game just to get money to get through another 2 or 3 years. Right now, it's more about having fun because it's something I really enjoy doing, and I have all these ideas that I couldn't touch in TinyFolks that I want to build in the new project. So this is what drives me now. And also having this creative outlet now that I have a more standard social commercial job, which is completely different. It's quite a good balance actually, because I see people at my shop, but I get creative and have this creative outlet on the side. I have both sources of revenues. Also, I know that when I'm at the shop, the game is still being sold on the internet. So it's that kind of security also, because you don't get a lot of money by owning a shop in a small rural town. Like the margins are pretty slim, and there's not much clients, not many clients. So yeah, it's a good balance. I basically we talked about Root Town a bit earlier, but I basically burnt out because the game basically exploded when I posted it on Twitter and on TikTok. So I was like, okay, great, next game. This is a great hook. People are really interested in it, and I was just building upon this prototype that I made in a game jam, and I was just building upon it, building feature after feature after feature, just to show them on Twitter, without having
clear goals.
Without clear goals or the clear loop. And I was just burnt out because at one point I go, okay, I can make this feature, but I'm not even sure what the point of the game is. I'm not sure. Like, I'm collecting money, but I don't know how the levels are gonna string out together. I don't know what I need to do, because I don't want to do work that I will throw in the garbage later. So I just stopped. I said, okay, let's go back to something I'm more sure of. And this was TinyFolks, so an idea I had in the head right after making TinyFolks. Even before I was saying, before releasing TinyFolks, someday I'll do a science version of this game. And so this was a clear continuation. But right now, as I'm making TinyFolks and as I'm running my shop, I'm also thinking about things I'm doing at the shop that could be gameplay features in Root Town. Like, I'm thinking more about the high concept now that I'm less in the moments working about features, working about shaders or camera movements, etc.
The shaders in Root
I'm
Town are epic.
it's not that hard. The hardest part is making sure it runs smoothly, but
Yeah.
it's a few shader tricks that goes a long way. Like uh, um, clamping colors in your camera pass so that every color is inside a specific palette is just like such a nice trick. You can do so many cool things with pixel art once you do that,
Mm-hmm.
cool transition using opacity, etc. Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah, no, that
It's
looks
a really fun
excellent.
project to work on. But yeah, I was thinking about scope and content and how much each trees was asking me time to draw and animate, etc. I was thinking, okay, maybe I need to find a good game loop before delving back into gameplay. So I just needed to work on something else. So right now I'm working on something else, and when either I get bored of TinyFolks, which now that I'm quite deep in development doesn't seem that likely. So the most likely thing is I end up releasing TinyFolks, and as I'm nearing the end of the project, going back to design boards to just think about and lay out my ideas, at least at first, just so I have a clear picture in my head. And then I don't need documentation anymore because I know
Yeah.
where I want to go,
Yeah.
what needs to be done. I already have the game in my head. I just need to manifest it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very common problem in game development. You
Yeah.
overscope. You don't know what. That was the biggest problem when I was making Hypatia. It's like you're adding all these things and you're just like, what's the point?
Yeah,
So
what's the
that's
point?
yeah.
Exactly.
It has to be cohesive. So do you have enough time for like one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. How do you effectively balance scope and maintaining cohesion with new ideas that arise mid-development process that you genuinely feel will serve to enhance the gameplay experience? Like that's basically
Mm.
the question that would have helped you, when you're making. So how do you balance that?
I think it depends on if it's a system idea or a content idea, because those are the two big parts of games. You either build system or you build content, and some games are more system driven and other are more content driven, like a visual novel or a book. A book is just content. Visual novel is basically just content as well. And on the other hand, chess is a fully systemic game. Or so you have the spectrum. So, for example, using TinyFolks as an example, if mid development I'm having ideas about great game systems and I'm already deep in development, I have to think about, okay, how does that fit? Is it really a good idea? Is it something that I can implement quickly and won't lead to a lot of change regarding things that I've already done or will do in the future? But if it's content, like if I have a random monster idea, then the limiter is more how much time do I have to, or does it take to do that kind of content? And in TinyFolks, like as we said previously in the interview, like having ways to make content really, really quickly helps you with deciding to add content or not mid-development. Like if it's really easy to add a new monster because someone in the chat just gave you a great idea, like it maybe took me an hour to fully implement an enemy, to like draw the thing, animate the thing, add it in game, created a few, like a scriptable object, and write down all the variables that need to be set, like the different attack patterns, etc. The how much health does it have, what does it drop. Like it's pretty simple once you have all the system built. And right now with my games, I'm really thinking about ways to improve my content creation workflow, because I know that like system, you can repeat them when you're playing a game. Like you can always engage with the same system like basically forever, as long as you're not bored with the game. But content, it disappears after a while. Like once you've seen a piece of content, you have spent it. You won't get the same amount of enjoyment out of the same TinyFolks biome once you've done it like 3 or 4 times. Like, you know the enemies, you know the patterns. So getting ways to add more content really efficiently is really important, because that's the currency that your game's lifespan or playtime depends on. So having ways to really quickly create and iterate and add new ideas as you have them in content is really useful. But I would, after a certain point, I would really refrain on changing or adding new system. You can always change systems, like as I said, tweak the game creation menu so you can remove the time limit, or changing how the status effect works because people are not comprehending the things correctly. Adding a few UI tweaks, etc. Why not? But you always have to think, when you're thinking about adding systems, is what does it bring? What does it cost? Does it bring really great value to the game that I can manage to spend that time adding the system to the game, but also making sure that it works well and fits well with all the other systems? And the more systems you have, it grows exponentially, basically. Once you have tons and tons of systems like crafting or exploration, navigation, AI, controlling pets, or I don't know, all the different systems you could add to a game. Like, you're basically making Dwarf Fortress at this point. You can't make, like, Dwarf Fortress worked at first because content was minuscule to create, but all the system, like, it's all system.
Yeah.
And you only build content by building systems, but that's the entire point of the game. And the game took mastery to develop and 15 years to fully finish. So yeah, systems are like, I prefer having nailed down system right from the start and having a good idea of how. And you can do prototypes and do game jams, like try a few systems out just to see if the gameplay system works well during a game jam. This way, when you go and make the full-fledged game, you already know the system you'll need. You know that if you want, you need to tweak them or add a few things, but then you can focus on content and making as much content to showcase those systems as much as possible.
Yeah. I think that was a very good explanation. Very important, for people having this cohesion. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we've been going 1 hour and 42 minutes. I think that's a very
a lot of things to say.
Yeah. But it's very enjoyable. I learned a lot from your process, and I'm very happy you found your success with TinyFolks. I'm looking forward to SpaceFolks. Do you have a release date yet for SpaceFolks, or?
I think it will be summer of 2024.
Okay. Yeah. And then you'll decide
around
whether
that time,
you'll decide whether you get back to the root town after that.
Yeah, I think I'll get back to it because it's also a really fun project. Now that I have now that I had time to step back. I want to get back in quite soon, yeah. Croissant or macaron after an exhausting interview, red wine and a cigarette.
Alrighty, Pierre. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jackie.
And it was really nice to meet you. Yes.
And goodbye, chat. Have a nice one. See ya.
See ya. Yeah, and make sure you save the Audacity file.
Yeah.
Yes,
I sent you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.